This is my favorite shop. Hello. Martin, I have 5 grandchildren. I want to buy violins for them.
André Rieu, the world-renowned violinist, is often seen as a symbol of joy and exuberance in classical music. But behind that warm smile and charming performances lies a childhood that was anything but joyful. Born in Maastricht, Netherlands in 1949, André grew up in a home where music was everything, but love was something his family struggled to offer. His father, a conductor for the Maastricht Symphony Orchestra, was a man of strict discipline. There were no hugs, no moments of affection, just the rigid expectation to perform perfectly, not just in music, but in life. In a family of 6 children, André was the third, and his upbringing felt more like a military camp than a home. There was no room for laughter or play, and love, as André once described it, was rare. His parents, both deeply devout Roman Catholics, believed in silence and structure over emotional connection. This environment left André feeling invisible unless he was performing flawlessly. The sense of neglect he felt as a child stayed with him, even into adulthood. "My parents didn't love me very much," he admitted once, and that belief haunted him throughout his life. As André struggled to connect with his parents, his natural energy clashed with their cold, disciplined approach. Music, which should have been a source of warmth and creativity, became another arena where he had to prove himself. His mother, who was fixated on his academic and musical achievements, was far from supportive when André's teachers described him as an artist. For her, that label was an insult, and it only made André feel more isolated. But beneath the surface of this emotional turmoil, André discovered something that would change his life forever. He found solace not in the violin's technique or precision, but in its emotion, specifically the emotional wobble of the sound known as vibrato. It was this feeling that would later define his performances and help him transform classical music into something that felt alive. For André, the violin wasn't just an instrument, it was a means of escape. It wasn't about mastering scales or impressing his critics. It was about the emotional connection he felt when playing. His love for the violin began at an early age, but what really sparked his passion wasn't just the instrument, it was his teacher. She was 18, blonde, and beautiful, and for young André she was everything. He was so enamored by her that he could barely focus on his lessons. Yet this infatuation ignited something deep inside him. Instead of struggling with the basics like many of his peers, André found himself effortlessly mimicking the way she played, learning to incorporate the emotional vibrato that would later define his style. At just 5 years old, André was already moving beyond the technicalities of music and feeling its soul. His teacher's influence, combined with his own natural talent, set him on a path that was drastically different from his father's vision for him. While his father pushed him to perfect the rigid, emotionless classical standards, André longed to break free. He didn't want to be a slave to the rules. He wanted to bring life to classical music, to make it something people could feel, not just admire. This clash with his father's strict expectations reached a boiling point when André told him he wanted to play waltzes. His father, a man who lived and breathed the serious, disciplined nature of classical music, snapped at him with cold disdain. "I didn't educate you to do waltzes." That rejection was a turning point for André. It was a rejection of who he was and what he dreamed of. From that moment on, André's desire to make music that wasn't just perfect but joyful and alive became his driving force. The risks were immense. Classical music wasn't exactly a genre known for embracing change, especially in an industry so rooted in tradition. But André wasn't interested in following tradition. He wanted to reshape it. So, in 1987, he took a giant leap of faith and founded the Johann Strauss Orchestra. But it wasn't just a new orchestra. It was a new way of thinking about classical music. André's orchestra was different. He didn't follow the rules. The musicians wore colorful outfits instead of the usual black tuxedos, and the concerts were full of energy, emotion, and theatrical flair. There was laughter, there was audience interaction, and above all, there was joy. The critics didn't get it. They called André's performances cheap and gimmicky, dismissing him as a pop culture violinist who was ruining classical music. But the audiences were a different story. They packed the venues, clapped, laughed, and danced in the aisles. The music wasn't just being played, it was being felt. André knew he was onto something big, but it wasn't until 1995 that the world truly started to see the magic. That year, during a Champions League football match in Vienna, André and his orchestra performed Shostakovich's Waltz No. 2 at halftime. What happened next was a cultural phenomenon. The 50,000 football fans in the stadium began swaying and humming along, completely immersed in the music. The cameras broadcasted the moment to over 300 million viewers across Europe, and what seemed like a quirky halftime show turned into an unforgettable moment of musical unity. After the stadium performance, André's music began to resonate with people who had never paid attention to classical music before. Strauss and Company, released a year earlier, quickly soared to the top of the charts. In the Netherlands, it sold 750,000 copies within just a few months, an unheard-of number for a classical album. But the success didn't stop there. His music spread to other countries, and soon André Rieu was performing for sold-out crowds in Europe, Australia, and beyond. For critics, André's rise to fame was a source of frustration. Many in the classical music world accused him of destroying tradition and turning music into a circus. They didn't understand how a man who wore a flamboyant smile and engaged with audiences could be a serious musician. Some even went so far as to call his performances musical pornography. They couldn't reconcile his approach with the solemn, reserved nature of classical music they had come to expect. But to André, the audience was everything. The Rieu effect wasn't just about music. It was about bringing people together through joy, energy, and connection. For André, the orchestra wasn't just a group of musicians on stage. It was a community of people united by the love of music. He understood that classical music wasn't just for the elite, it was for everyone. Whether they were sitting in a grand concert hall or dancing in the aisles, André made sure that everyone who attended his concerts felt included, valued, and most importantly, heard. Despite the dazzling success and the adoration of millions, André Rieu's journey was not without its personal and emotional challenges. In 2016, tragedy struck during what was supposed to be a festive Christmas tour in the UK. His longtime trombonist, Ruud Merckx, suffered a sudden cardiac arrest in his sleep, just as the orchestra was staying in Leeds. Merckx had been with André for over 20 years, and his death hit the orchestra hard. André, who always considered his musicians to be family, immediately cancelled the Nottingham show that night and postponed the rest of the UK tour. For the first time, the orchestra felt the weight of a personal loss that went far beyond music. But it wasn't just the loss of a dear friend that rocked André's world. Over the years, André faced his own set of health struggles. In 2010, he was forced to postpone shows after a viral infection affected his inner ear, making it difficult to maintain his balance. And in 2019, he continued to perform despite battling a fever. He'd always pushed through illness and fatigue to keep his fans happy. But by 2024, something changed. During a concert in Mexico City, André's body gave out. At 74, he was still performing tirelessly, traveling the world with the energy of someone much younger. But the high altitude and a nasty flu combined to push him past his limits. As André Rieu approaches his 75th birthday, the once unstoppable force behind the Johann Strauss Orchestra is beginning to face the reality of his own limitations. After decades of dazzling audiences with his vibrant performances, including 100 concerts a year, André has started to shift his focus. His health scares in recent years, most notably the collapse in Mexico City, have made him reconsider his relentless touring schedule. At 74, he no longer has the same stamina that once saw him traveling across the globe, always putting on a show no matter the cost. His son Pierre, who had already taken on much of the business side of the operation, stepped up even further. What started as helping with logistics and managing the crew has now evolved into a more hands-on role in overseeing the entire operation. Pierre is now in charge of making sure André's tours are safer, smaller, and closer to home. No more grueling international flights and exhausting schedules. This shift was necessary for André to keep performing without risking his health, and it shows the deep bond and trust between father and son. André, once fiercely protective of every aspect of his career, has now come to rely on Pierre, fully trusting him with the future of the orchestra and its continued success. But even as André begins to slow down, he's not ready to call it quits. Pierre and André are planning a final concert series in Maastricht, the city where it all began. This could very well be a goodbye tour, but André refuses to be defeated by the thought of retirement. Despite the health concerns, he laughs it off, joking that he'll perform until he's 140. His stubbornness and passion for music still burn brightly, and while retirement looms on the horizon, André Rieu's spirit is anything but ready to step away from the stage. His legacy is already firmly established. He didn't just change the way the world views classical music. He created a legacy of joy, inclusivity, and connection that will carry on for generations. He turned waltzes into celebrations, orchestras into parties, and classical music into something that belongs to everyone. And while the future may be uncertain, one thing is clear. André Rieu's influence on the world of music and culture will not fade anytime soon. André Rieu's life has been one of extraordinary highs and personal struggles. But through it all, his love for music and his drive to share it with the world has never wavered. From the small beginnings of the Maastricht Salon Orchestra to leading one of the world's most beloved orchestras, André revolutionized classical music, making it accessible, exciting, and filled with joy. His concerts weren't just about the music. They were about creating a shared experience with the audience, one where people could laugh, dance, and feel truly alive. As André prepares for what might be his final concert tour in his hometown of Maastricht, there's no denying that he has already left an indelible mark on the world. He may have faced a childhood filled with emotional scars and rejection, but he has rewritten his story in the most powerful way possible. Through music that touches hearts, changes lives, and unites people across generations and borders. His story isn't just one of personal triumph. It's a reminder of how passion, determination, and the right amount of defiance can change the world. So, as we look toward the future, one question remains. Will André Rieu truly step away from the stage? Or will he continue to defy the odds and bring his joyful waltzes to the world for many years to come? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain. André's legacy will never be forgotten.